You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like you do the mirror
Oh,
pull.
everyone does mirror pull.
Right. You wake up, you're looking in the bathroom mirror, and you just sort of take your fingers and pull the skin on the side of your face back a couple of inches,
Yeah.
just to see what you would look like if, gravity hadn't been doing its thing for the last few decades.
Exactly. Just checking the alternative reality.
Yeah, and you think, well, maybe I just need a quick tweak. But here is the massive paradox we are looking at today. Like, in the golden age of the 15-minute Botox appointment, where these quick fixes are just more accessible than ever, why do so many people who get them end up looking perpetually, just unavoidably exhausted?
It is a really profound contradiction. I mean, we have millions of people walking around with perfectly smooth, line-free skin, but they still look incredibly worn out.
Yeah.
And the reason for that disconnect is that the marketing surrounding these treatments, it rarely explains the underlying mechanics, like what is actually happening to your facial architecture as you age.
Which is the entire mission of our deep dive today. So we are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources from Dr. Shim Ching. He's a board-certified plastic surgeon with 25 years of experience.
A very long time in this specific field, yeah.
Totally. And he runs one of the busiest practices in the U.S. out of Honolulu, while also, practicing internationally in Dubai and Qatar.
And that global perspective is crucial.
Right, because we are going to use his expertise to just cut through the avalanche of marketing noise out there. We're going to decode the actual mechanics of why our faces age and understand why the wildly popular quick fixes sometimes just completely backfire.
Because to understand the backfire, we really have to establish the baseline of what these tools are actually doing to the tissue. If we look at the historical context, the explosive growth of injectables over the last, say, 2 decades, it's entirely driven by avoiding the trauma of surgery. I mean, 25 years ago, making a significant visible change to the architecture of the face that was a major medical event.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because skipping the heavy medical jargon and looking straight at the architecture is where this gets wild.
It really does.
Back then, if you wanted to change the shape of your jawline or project your chin, you couldn't just get a shot. Surgeons literally had to use solid implants, or they were like physically carving and breaking bone in the face.
Right. It was a highly invasive undertaking. Breaking bone or inserting synthetic implants, that requires general anesthesia, significant tissue disruption, and, weeks of visible healing.
Yeah, real downtime.
Exactly. Then along comes this modern generation of injectables, and suddenly the entire paradigm shifts.
It's completely different now.
You can walk into an office, sit in a chair, and with just a needle, achieve visible architectural results that previously required an operating room.
Which is crazy.
The downtime is practically non-existent. You might experience some minor bruising or a little bit of slight swelling, but you are essentially going right back to your daily life.
And the two most famous architects in this whole non-surgical world are Botox and dermal fillers.
Yes.
But they do two completely different things mechanically. So let's start with Botox. The actual medical term is neurotoxins or neuromodulators.
Yes, right.
And it fundamentally works by paralyzing the tissue.
Yeah, it is a highly concentrated liquid, and it's injected in these really microscopic amounts into very specific facial muscles.
Just a tiny drop.
Exactly. Its entire job is to block the chemical signals from the nerves that tell those targeted muscles to contract.
Okay.
So when the muscle is paralyzed and cannot contract, it can no longer scrunch the skin attached above it. Therefore, it physically stops creating what we call a dynamic wrinkle.
Right, the lines that form when you frown or raise your eyebrow.
Exactly. It freezes the movement right at the source.
But then you have fillers, which, like the name suggests, are temporary substances used to physically fill in space.
Yeah, they add localized volume.
Right, they are placed under the skin to fill in the deep valleys. Those static wrinkles that are there even when your face is resting. Or they're used to actually sculpt the face, like building up a jawline, projecting a chin, or filling in the hollows at your temples.
And because you are physically depositing a gel-like substance into the tissue, there are very specific post-care rules for both of these treatments. And that really highlights their mechanical nature.
Like what kind of rules?
Well, for 48 hours after either of these injections, you cannot engage in any strenuous exercise, and you absolutely cannot lie down directly on your face.
Oh, wow. So no face planting into the pillow.
No, definitely not. You have to let the material settle exactly where the doctor placed it. You don't want gravity or pressure pushing the liquid into a neighboring muscle group.
That makes a lot of sense. Thinking about how these two work together, it's almost like a crisp piece of paper. Like every time you smile or frown, you are folding that piece of paper.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Botox goes in and stops the folding. It paralyzes the muscle, so you physically cannot fold the paper anymore.
Right.
But if you have already been folding that paper 1,000 times over the last 40 years, even when you lay it completely flat on the table, the crease is still there.
And that static crease is where the filler comes in. The filler acts as like a spackle. It fills in that permanent groove from underneath, so the surface of the paper looks perfectly smooth again.
Got it.
What's fascinating here is how this incredible leap in accessibility, the ability to just smooth the paper or freeze the fold without a scalpel, has completely shifted our societal approach to aging.
It really has.
It has transformed facial rejuvenation from a significant, sometimes secretive surgical intervention into basically an in-office errand. People do this on their lunch break.
Which sounds like absolute magic. You get a little poke, you go back to work, and the paper is smooth. But this brings us right back to the massive paradox we started with.
The tired paradox.
Yeah. If it is so easy and these tools are so incredibly effective at smoothing wrinkles and adding volume, why are we seeing an epidemic of people who have perfectly smooth skin yet look perpetually exhausted?
Because that is exactly what you observe. Individuals with no surface wrinkles, their cheeks are seemingly full, but they project this constant state of fatigue.
Right. Why is that?
According to the clinical experience and the research we're looking at, looking tired actually has very little to do with surface lines.
Really?
Yeah. Botox softens the expressions, filler restores surface volume, but if you still look tired, it means the practitioner is treating the wrong layer of the problem.
Okay, so we need to go beneath the surface. The anatomy breaks down into 3 main culprits that cause that permanent, tired look. They actually trigger each other in a chain reaction, don't they?
Yes, they do. It all starts with mid-face volume loss.
Face volume loss. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, when we are young, the fat pads in our cheeks are tightly packed and they sit quite high on the cheekbone. They act as a supportive scaffold for the entire face.
Like a structural foundation.
Exactly. But as we age, the ligaments holding those fat pads, they stretch. Gravity pulls them down.
Oh, man. Gravity always wins.
Always. And when those fat pads flatten and descend, it creates a literal void, a hollow or a shadow directly under the eyes.
I see.
Because that shadow sits dead center in the middle of your face, it projects a constant look of fatigue. And that's regardless of how much you sleep.
And when those fat pads drop, they don't just disappear. They physically push down on the tissue below them, which leads us straight into the second culprit.
Skin laxity.
Right.
The structural foundation is cascading downward. The deeper tissues relax, the skin loses its snap, and the whole face loses its natural upward tension.
It's all just falling.
Yes. As that mid-face volume pushes downward, the jawline softens and loses its sharp, bony definition. The corners of the mouth turn down under the weight, and the entire lower half of the face just becomes heavier.
Which eventually impacts the upper face as well,
Right.
bringing us to the third culprit, which is eyelid changes. Because the eyes are the absolute focal point of human interaction. When the structural support of the face shifts, the skin of the upper eyelids can stretch and become heavy, or the brow itself descends, physically pushing down on the eye.
And on the lower lids, as that cheek fat pad drops away, it exposes bulging fat or deep hollowing underneath the eye.
All connected.
Exactly. If the eyes look heavy and worn out, the whole face looks worn out, even if your forehead is completely frozen and smooth.
You know, it's important to clarify that lifestyle still plays a role here. We often hear tired and immediately think about drinking more water, getting 8 hours of sleep, managing stress, or staying out of the sun.
Oh, absolutely. Those habits are absolutely critical for the quality, the texture, and the elasticity of the skin itself.
Yeah.
But the blunt anatomical truth is that even the most pristine lifestyle habits on Earth cannot physically lift a descended cheek fat pad back up your face.
Okay, wait. If filler is literally designed to restore volume and fill valleys, and we just established that the hollow under the eye is a valley caused by volume loss, why can't we just take a needle and pump that specific under-eye hollow full of filler to fix the shadow?
This raises an important question, and it really highlights the exact logical trap that so many patients and honestly some practitioners fall into.
Right, it seems so obvious. Just fill the hole.
It does seem obvious, but if you only look at the shadow under the eye and inject filler directly into that hollow, you are completely ignoring the actual mechanical cause of the shadow.
The cheek falling down.
Exactly. The real issue is the loss of structural support from the cheek below the eye. If you try to chase a structural problem by aggressively filling the under eye hollow, you do not make the person look rested.
Wow,
You make them look swollen. Overfilling the under eye or the cheek to compensate for a dropping face creates a very specific, heavy, puffy fatigue. Looking youthful and rested isn't just about having perfectly smooth, plumped-up skin. It is a highly delicate interplay of light, shadow, structure, and balance.
So we are essentially trying to paint over a shadow instead of moving the light source.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
When facial structures are high and tight in their youthful positions, they reflect light evenly. When they drop, they cast shadows. You cannot fix a lighting and structural problem by just injecting liquid gel into the shadows.
Which is why we really have to examine the tipping point.
Okay.
Since we've established that these injectables cannot solve a structural collapse, we need to understand their absolute hard limits. Like, what happens to the facial architecture when we push past what a needle is physically capable of doing?
Well, the hard limit is gravity. Fillers and Botox cannot lift a drooping face, period.
I cannot.
When you use filler on sagging features like those deep nasolabial folds that run from the nose to the mouth or the marionette lines that pull the mouth downward, you are not lifting anything upward. You are purely camouflaging the sag by filling the crease next to it.
And the distinction between camouflage and restructuring is the entire ballgame.
Yeah.
When a practitioner attempts to achieve a structural lift using only needles, they inevitably have to inject more and more product to create the illusion of tension.
And that's when things get weird.
This is the mechanical cause of the overfilling phenomenon we see everywhere today.
And when you look at the physical properties of what is being injected, the overfilling makes complete sense. Like take the lips, for example. Lips have a finite anatomical envelope.
Right. They can only stretch so much.
Exactly. When they're pushed past their structural capacity with filler, they don't just look unnaturally huge. Because you're packing so much gel into a small, tight space, it creates intense physical tension. The lips actually feel firm and hard to the touch. It ceases to look or behave like natural human tissue.
We see the exact same physics at play with the non-surgical rhinoplasty, often called the liquid nose job.
Oh, I've seen those online.
Yeah, fillers are excellent for camouflaging a small bump on the bridge of the nose. You just fill the space above and below it.
Sure.
But patients often want to drastically reshape or lift the tip of the nose.
Right.
Liquid filler cannot do that effectively. You are injecting a soft gel under the tight, thick skin of the nose tip. That skin acts like a tight rubber band pushing back against the gel.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Because the gel has no structural rigidity, it has to go somewhere, so it spreads outward laterally. This results in a nose that looks overinflated, wide, and entirely disproportionate to the rest of the face.
You see the same thing with people chasing that superhero jawline. They want a sharp, defined jaw. But again, filler is ultimately a soft gel sitting under the skin. It cannot mimic the sharp edge of bone.
No, it can't.
If you place too much of it along the jawline, trying to force a shape that is there, it just makes the lower half of the face look thick, heavy, and unusually wide.
Because you are using the wrong tool for the job.
Yeah.
To truly lift the face, to recreate a sharp, bony jawline, or to permanently reposition descended cheeks, you must look at surgical solutions.
We're talking about actual operations.
Yes. Procedures like a deep plane facelift, a neck lift, an eyelid lift, or utilizing actual structural implants like chin and jaw implants, or, carving cartilage in a rhinoplasty.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Listening to you describe the mechanics of this, it sounds exactly like trying to renovate a really old house.
Okay, I like this.
Using fillers and Botox on a face that is fundamentally sagged is like walking into a house with a visibly sinking foundation and deciding your master plan is to just put up shiny, brand new drywall over the cracks.
Oh, wow. Yes.
You step back and the wall looks incredibly smooth for a second, but the house is still tilting. The underlying architecture is completely compromised.
Right.
Eventually, you can't just keep adding more drywall to hide the tilt. You have to bring in the heavy machinery, go into the basement, jack up the house, and fix the foundation itself.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Surgery, unlike injectables, actually takes apart the anatomical layers.
How so?
When a surgeon performs something like a deep plane facelift, they are not just pulling the skin tight. That's an old misconception.
Right, the wind tunnel look.
Exactly. Right? They actually go completely beneath the skin, accessing the deeper structural layers the muscle and the fascial network known as the SMAS layer. They physically release those descended ligaments and pull that entire anatomical unit back up to where it was 20 years ago.
That's incredible.
They are restructuring the foundation into a youthful configuration. They permanently reposition the tissue before gently redraping the skin over it.
Rather than just spackling a heavy gel over a sinking foundation.
Exactly. If we connect this back to the bigger picture of why so many people are frustrated or looking distorted with their aesthetic results, it is because Botox and fillers are continually marketed and treated as complete definitive solutions.
And they just aren't.
They are not. They are complementary tools. They are fantastic for smoothing the paper and adding a touch of localized volume. But when a patient fundamentally needs the house jacked up, and they are only sold more drywall, the result is the tired paradox.
Yeah, you just look puffy and exhausted.
True, natural-looking rejuvenation requires a deep understanding of when to stop camouflaging the surface and when it is time to address the structural, architectural relationships of the face.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The biggest takeaway is that being genuinely well-informed in this space means developing an architectural lens.
That's the perfect term for it.
Whether you are personally considering a procedure or you're just, scrolling through your phone trying to figure out why a famous actor suddenly looks a little off, you now have the tools to understand the mechanics of what you are looking at.
You can see the difference between surface camouflage and true structural restoration.
Exactly. You can look at a swollen under eye and recognize that it's just an attempt to fix a descended cheek with liquid gel rather than an actual lift.
Yeah.
You can spot the shiny drywall.
Yes.
It changes everything about how you consume this kind of imagery, and it gives you a massive shield against the marketing that promises a facelift in a syringe.
As we wrap up this exploration, I really want to leave you with a thought to mull over regarding the future of aesthetics.
Okay, what is it?
We've established today that our faces are essentially living landscapes. They're topographies of light and shadow that directly reflect our underlying bony and muscular structure.
Right.
Right now, our primary non-surgical answer is to artificially fill the valleys with synthetic gels to manipulate those shadows. But considering the hard physical limits of what we can inject before we distort the face, will the future of anti-aging move completely away from this concept of filling altogether? Will the next great medical frontier bypass camouflage entirely and focus solely on how we might naturally regenerate our facial foundation, signaling our bodies to regrow our own bone, our own collagen, and our own fat pads from the inside out?
That is a wild thought. No more spackle, no more synthetic gels, just a house that somehow rebuilds its own foundation. Until that day comes, I think we will all be looking at that morning mirror pole just a little bit differently. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. Keep questioning what you see.